Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I greet everyone who are joining us. So today we are going to have a forum entitled Freedom of Assembly in Malaysia, Limitations and Procedure. Together with me, Ani Sofia binti Alizi and Murni binti Maswan as panelists for today's forum. So welcome to both of you. Okay, so as for now, I will start by explaining some procedures on how the forum should be run. Okay, the forum will be done in two rounds. Okay, on the first round, I will start first by explaining the provision enunciated in Federal Constitution regarding freedom of assembly. Then I will pass the first question to Miss Anis, and then I will pass the next question to Miss Murni right after Miss Anis has done giving her explanation. So on the next round, I will appoint the next question to Miss Murni first and then Miss Anis. Okay, so for the both panelists, it should be noted that the question given shall be answered within 5 minutes limit of time. So are you guys ready?
Yes.
Yes, we are
Okay.
ready.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. Okay, so let us start the forum. So, as we all know, freedom of assembly is essential pillars of democratic setup. So, the lifeblood of free society. Uh, Assembly is an effective way to spread any concerns regarding to any critical issues arises that people want to address. So also, assembly also are welcome by the constitution. So according to Article 10 Clause B of Federal Constitution, it is explicitly stated that all citizens have the right to assemble peaceably and without arms. Here, it means that all citizens have their rights to have peaceful assembly, which does not involve any violence and an arms, weapon, or anything, which can cause harm towards others. So, however, this might be a major concern for some of us on how far this right can be exercised. So, the first round, I will ask Miss Anis to clarify on it. So, Miss Anis, okay, may I know whether there are limitations of freedom of assembly? Okay, so please, the stage is yours.
All right, thank you, Encik Azra. Assalamualaikum and good evening, IB to all of you. As we have discussed before, Malaysian has the right of freedom of assembly or association, and it has been stated in Article 10, Clause 1, Subsection B, that all citizens have the right to assemble peacefully and without arms. However, we must note that there are also limitations present in relation with this freedom. It can be seen in Article 10, Clause 2, and also Article 149, Clause 1 of the Federal Constitution, where it permits Parliament to impose restrictions on the exercise of this freedom. Firstly, in Article 10, Clause 2, we can see that the limitations are concerning security, public order, friendly relations with other countries, and also morality. Whereas in Article 149, Clause 1, the government may take action on a body of person in certain circumstances. Some of the situations are, firstly, if the body of person causes fear to the public, or where they commit organized violence, or they excite disaffection against YDPA and the government, and also they encourage feelings of ill will and hostility against different races. And those are the limitations that we can procure from the Federal Constitution itself. That's all from me.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Anis. So here it should be noted that the limitation of freedom of assembly is concerning or security, public order, friendly relations with other countries, and morality. So government may restrict the freedom of assembly, right? If there is regarding those matters, if the assembly is affect those matters. Okay, all right. So we already know about the limitation of freedom of assembly. Now, the other question might hovering in people's mind in the procedures to obtain the right of peaceful assembly. So I will ask Ms. Murni. Ms. Murni, to clarify on the procedures to obtain the right of peaceful assembly. So Ms. Murni, what
Yes.
are the procedures to obtain the right of peaceful assembly? Okay, so please, the stage is yours.
All right. First of all, thank you to the moderator for your question. Freedom of assembly is indeed one of the rights given to the citizens of Malaysia as stated under Article Clause 1B of the Federal Constitution. However, it is not easily attainable by a person as it should undergo some procedures before before the freedom can be exercised. First of all, the organizer of the event should give a 10-day notification to the officer in charge of a police district, or in short, OCPD, before the assembly is held as stipulated in Section 9 Clause 1 of the Peaceful Assembly Act 2012, or PAA. Once the notification is given, the OCPD can impose certain conditions and restrictions to the assembly, but they have no power to completely prohibit or prevent the assembly. Secondly, upon the 10 days notification to the OCPD, the organizer should state the name and address of the organizer, purpose of the assembly, date and place where the assembly will be held, and expected numbers of participants as stipulated in Section 10 of the PAA. Next, the organizer shall request the consent from the owner or the occupier of the place of assembly that will take place as stipulated in Section 10 of PAA. In the case of public prosecutor against Yunis Warren and Lelaki Ramajan, there is an issue arise whether the requirement under Section 9 Clause 1 of the Peaceful Assembly Act to give notice prior to the exercise of right to assemble peacefully is a restriction within the meaning of Article 10 Clause 2B of the Federal Constitution. The court held that the purpose of the Peaceful Assembly Act is to facilitate the exercise of a right granted by Article 10 Clause 1B of the Federal Constitution and not to restrict it. The PAA is procedural in nature because nothing therein affects the substantive right to assemble peacefully. The PAA merely sets out a series of procedural steps to be taken to ensure and facilitate the exercise of a constitutional right. Under the PAA also, the police have ceased its function as a decision maker. Instead, they have assumed the role as a regulator and facilitator for peaceful assembly. In conclusion, freedom of assembly has been exercised for years in Malaysia, and during those years, the authorities are more willing to facilitate a peaceful assembly, and citizens are also more aware in their rights. Although there is always more room for improvement. It is crucial for citizens to have the right to protest and demonstrate in any democratic state, and they must be allowed to express themselves and be free from any unreasonable restrictions and harassment that may violate the right of a peaceful assembly. That's all for me.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Murni. So it's a very factful explanation by Ms. Murni, but it should be noted that the organizers be responsible to inform the police 10 days before assembly. And then what Ms. Murni already stated that the organizer should give the name and the address of the organizers, purpose of the assembly, and date and place where the assembly will be held, and expected numbers of participants. And also, it must be given consent from the occupier of the assembly that will be taken place. Alright, so we already know about the procedures and limitation of an assembly, but we also need to know the consequences if the organizer of the assembly do not comply the procedures set on them. So, for the next question, I will ask Ms. Murni. Okay, Ms. Murni, this is another question for you. Okay, what are consequences if somebody violate freedom of assembly in Malaysia, which was granted by the government? Maybe you can provide several sanctions as enunciated in any provisions. Okay, the stage is yours.
Again, thank you for the question. To be honest, this is quite a tough question for me, but I will try my best to answer it. Okay, to tackle this question, I will first refer to the Peaceful Assembly Act 2012, or PAA 2012 in short. According to Section 12, Subsection 1 of the PAA 2012, protester can be detained by any police officer, even without a warrant, if the participants possess any arms, refuses or fails to comply with any restrictions, or bring the children to an assembly, under the assembly specified in second schedule of Peaceful Assembly Act. Meanwhile, according to Section 21 Clause 1 of the same Act, the police may order any people in the assembly to disperse from the assembly if the participants violate the law laid on the Peaceful Assembly Act. Moreover, in Section 21 Clause 3 of the same Act also stated that any person who fails to comply with the order issued under this section commits an offence and shall, on conviction, be liable to a fine not exceeding to 20,000 ringgit. Now, I will brief you on the criminal sanctions that could be charged to those who violated the freedom of assembly as enunciated in the Penal Code. The punishment for imprisonment for a term which may extend to 6 months or a fine or both will be given to those who attend the unlawful assembly as stated in section 143 and those who wantonly give provocation with intent to cause riot. But the provocation is not committed as stated in section 153 of the Penal Code. Those who harbor persons hired for an unlawful assembly as stated in section 157 of the Penal Code, and those who are engaged or hired to do or assist in doing an unlawful assembly as stated in section 156 of the Act. As for those who wantonly give provocation with intent to cause riot, and this time the offence of rioting is committed in consequence of such provocation is stated in 153 punished for imprisonment for a term which may extend to 1 year or a fine or both. Next, with an imprisonment for a term which may extend to 2 years or with a fine or both will be given to those who possess weapons or missiles at unlawful assemblies as stated in section 144 of the Act, joining or continuing in an unlawful assembly as stated in section 145 of the Penal Code, those who riot as stated in section 147 of the Penal Code, and those who are so engaged or hired to go armed with any deadly weapon as stated in section 158 of the Penal Code. Imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 years or with a fine or both will be then given to those who committed the offence of assaulting or obstructing public servant when they try to suppress the riot as stated in section 152 of the Act. Then, those who possess weapons or missiles at the riot will be punished with the imprisonment for a term which may extend to 5 years or both as stated in section 148 of the Penal Code. And last but not least, it's a fine not exceeding 2,000 ringgit for those who are the owner or occupier of land on which an unlawful assembly is held as stated in section 154 of the said Act. From these offences that I have just mentioned, it is indeed that peaceful street protests encourage the development of an engaged and informed citizenry and strengthen representative democracy by enabling direct participation in public affairs. However, we should always follow the law and please be careful when you are going to join or organize any protest. That is all from me. Thank you.
Okay, I wonder because Miss Muni said this is a tough question, but then she managed to give so many provisions regarding to the sanction of violating the freedom of assembly. Okay, from this offence that I have heard. Okay, Miss Murni explained very much about the sanction. Okay, she mentioned that those can be go to imprisonment if violate the freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. Sorry, and then they can be detained by the police officer in specific terms regulated in the Peaceful Assembly Act. Okay, so now I will move to the next question. So the next question is very close to our situations nowadays. Okay, Miss Murni. Miss Anis. Okay, okay, Miss Anis. As we all know, okay, our country is currently living in Malaysia. Our country is in pandemic COVID-19. So government have to implement movement control order MCO to curb the disease from spreading. So regarding to our situation now, what is the status of our freedom of assembly? Okay, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you for the question. Regarding our current situation in Malaysia, it is important for citizens' life as much as possible. Thus, the government would have to take extraordinary precautions, which hopefully will help us mitigate the higher risk of infected individuals by this disease. Now, in Malaysia, the right to association has already been provided in the Federal Constitution, Article 10, Clause 1, Subsection C, where it states that that every citizen has the right to form association. What it means is that the people of Malaysia can be involved in groups, whether to form and organize the groups or even to join and participate in the groups. However, it is crucial to note that there would have to be certain limitations and also circumstances where this rule could not be exercised freely and wholly by the public. Now, if we look at Article 10 plus 2 of the Federal Constitution, it states that the Parliament may by law impose on the rights conferred by subsection A clause 1 such restrictions like what I just said, which is regarding the security, regarding public order, regarding morality, and also it was designed to protect the privileges of the Parliament or any legislative assembly, or to provide against contempt of court, defamation, or incitement to any offense. So what it basically means is that the government has the power and capability to restrict the freedom of the public as needed because it can affect the national security. Now, let us have a look at the current example in our country, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic is a new disease, which before this didn't even exist yet. Now, and we haven't found yet the cure to treat and combat this virus completely. And besides that, it also spreads easily in crowds of people, and it makes it difficult for the government to keep control of the spreading of virus and to regulate the number of cases daily. Therefore, the government would have to take special measures to effectively curb this pandemic to further spread in the public. Now, the government also needs a statute to specifically govern this matter and issue. So, the government can make use of the Prevention and Control of Infectious Disease Act 1988 to combat the situation and also to prevent further harm to the public. According to Section 11, Clause A of Prevention and Control of Infectious Diseases Act 1988, it states that if a minister is satisfied that there is an outbreak of infectious disease in any area in Malaysia, or any area is threatened with an epidemic of any infectious disease, he may declare such area to be an infected local area. Moreover, if we look at Section 11, Clause 3 of this Act, it states that during the continuance in force of an order made under subsection 1, it would be lawful for any authorized officer to direct any person or body living in the infected local area to subject himself to treatment, to immunization, to isolation, observation, surveillance, and any other measures as the authorized officer considers necessary to control the disease. Now, Section 11 actually implies that in case of infected areas declared by the minister, authorized officers may take proper actions to anyone living in the area, and it shows that the freedom of association can be limited and restricted by certain situations, which in this situation, an outbreak of infectious disease. So the people must abide under this rule and should not commit acts that are against the rule. Now, for an example in Malaysia, is when the government limits the number of Muslim citizens praying in the mosque, where the people should not exercise their right to pray in the mosque freely, as the right has been restricted under the law due to the pandemic. Now, if the public goes against the government order and the law, it might worsen the situation by increasing the probability of spreading the COVID-19 virus. So it is clear that by exercising the right of association freely in this current situation, it would do more harm than good. Therefore, referring back to the question, the freedom of association as conferred by the Federal Constitution can be restrained due to the safety and health of the public that must be protected at all costs. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Anis, for the clarification, which I believe that the explanation is super detailed and easily understood by us. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to close this forum by thanking to both panelists for their participation in our forum today. Okay, I would like to also express my gratitude for serving as our moderator this afternoon. Okay, so I would like to apologize if any mistakes happened throughout our forum. Okay, indeed, what comes the best is from Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala, and all weakness throughout this forum is come from myself. Okay, thank you for joining this forum, and Assalamualaikum. See you next time.